Today, we're taking a long, hard look at something sitting in almost every kitchen cabinet in Britain. Something millions of people pour into a bowl every morning and call breakfast. We're talking about cereal. And before you reach for your box tomorrow morning, there are 8 UK breakfast cereals worth understanding more closely. Not because they're dangerous, but because once you start reading the label, really reading it, the story on the front of the box and the story on the back are often two very different things. Think about how breakfast used to look in this country. Porridge, a slice of toast, eggs, simple foods your grandparents would recognize. Now walk down the cereal aisle and count how many boxes shout whole grain or high in fibre on the front, while listing sugar as the second or third ingredient on the back. Many of these cereals aren't just processed foods, they're ultra-processed foods. So heavily engineered from their original state that nutritional scientists have started asking serious questions. Not just about what's been added, but about what's been lost. Nature made the oat simple. Industry made breakfast complicated. And once you see the gap between the two, you can't unsee it. So let's start lifting the lid. Number 1. Kellogg's Frosties. Frosties is one of the most iconic cereal brands in British history. The blue box, the cartoon tiger, the slogan. Decades of familiarity. And that familiarity is exactly what makes it worth looking at closely. Because familiarity is a powerful thing. It stops us asking questions we should probably be asking. Frosties contains around 37 grams of sugar per 100 grams. More than a third of the box, by weight, is sugar. A typical serving before milk can account for close to 20% of an adult's recommended daily sugar intake. And children, who are the primary target audience for this product, have a lower threshold altogether. When you factor in that most people pour a larger portion than the recommended serving size on the label, those figures climb further. The ingredient list is short. Maize, sugar, barley malt extract, salt, vitamins. But simplicity can be misleading. That maize hasn't arrived as a whole grain. It's been refined, cooked, extruded under high heat and pressure, and then systematically coated in sugar. The grain that goes in and the flake that comes out are very different things. Extrusion, the industrial process behind most puffed and flaked cereals, can significantly alter the starch structure of the original grain. The body processes that end product quite differently from how it would process the same grain eaten whole. The vitamins listed, niacin, iron, B6, riboflavin, thiamine, folic acid, vitamin D, B12, were added during manufacturing after processing took place. This is called fortification, and it's standard across the industry. The question it raises isn't whether those nutrients are present. It's why a product needs nutrients added back in at all, and whether a synthetic vitamin introduced at the end of an industrial process behaves the same way as a nutrient that occurred naturally in the original food. The tiger on the front tells one story. The ingredient list on the back tells another. Number 2. Nestlé Cheerios. Cheerios is marketed with quiet confidence. No mascot, no neon. Just calm, measured branding that says, this is a sensible, grown-up, heart-healthy choice. And that heart health claim is the part worth understanding. The claim is built around beta-glucan, a soluble fibre in oats genuinely linked to cholesterol management. The science is real, but the research typically requires a consistent, significant daily intake as part of a broader healthy diet. The cereal box implies a straightforward benefit. The science behind it is considerably more conditional. Cheerios contains around 19 grams of sugar per 100 grams. Lower than many on this list, but worth noting given how prominently health credentials appear on the packaging. A product positioned as a health choice gets less scrutiny on ingredients than one that is openly sweet. That positioning lowers the consumer's guard. The fortification list is long. Niacin, iron, zinc, calcium, vitamins, B6, B12, C, D, E, thiamine, riboflavin, folic acid. All added, all introduced because processing altered the original oat significantly enough to require nutritional rebuilding. The gap between Cheerios' health positioning and what a full ingredient analysis reveals is worth understanding, especially for anyone buying it specifically because of those heart health claims. Number 3. Kellogg's Special K Original. Special K has one of the most successful marketing histories of any food product in the UK. For years, it was associated with slimming, discipline, and making smarter choices. There was even a famous 2-week challenge built around it. The message was clear. This is the cereal for people who are trying to be better, to eat less, to choose wisely. It was aspirational food, and it worked. It's worth asking what's actually inside the product behind all of that positioning. Special K contains around 17 grams of sugar per 100 grams. It's low in fat, which was the cornerstone of its slimming credentials. But the relationship between low-fat foods and weight management is considerably more complicated today than when Special K built its brand. We now understand that fat and calorie content are only part of the story, and that refined carbohydrates and processed grains play a role in how the body responds to food. The low-fat era of nutrition science has largely been revised. Special K's image hasn't quite kept up. The ingredient list includes rice, wheat gluten, sugar, dehydrated skimmed milk, wheat flour, barley malt extract, and salt. Wheat gluten appears as an early ingredient, not for nutrition, but for texture and structural integrity. It's a processing decision. Words like light on the packaging are impression words rather than regulated nutritional claims with defined legal thresholds. They create associations rather than making provable statements. And those associations have done enormous commercial work for decades. The slimming credentials of Special K were built on marketing strategy. The ingredient list, read carefully, raises questions about whether that positioning was ever as straightforward as the box suggested. What you're looking at is a highly processed rice-based product with added gluten, added sugar, and a list of added vitamins, sold for a generation on the promise of a slimmer you. Number 4. Tesco Everyday Value Cornflakes. At well under £1 for a large box, Tesco's Everyday Value Cornflakes sit at the very bottom of the market, bought by millions every week. And at that price, a simple question is worth asking. What has to give? The sugar content sits at around 8 grams per 100 grams, lower than most cereals. But the refined maize base has a high glycemic impact even without added sugar, and cornflakes are typically eaten with additional sweetening on top. The ingredient list is milled maize, sugar, salt, and a column of added vitamins. Every single vitamin on that label has been added back in, not retained. Added. Because the process of turning raw maize into a shelf-stable uniform flake strips out what was naturally there. The fortification makes the nutritional maths add up on the label. But the difference between a synthetic vitamin added to a highly processed flake and a nutrient occurring naturally in whole food is a conversation the cereal aisle has never been keen to have. Tesco, Everyday Value. Cornflakes aren't uniquely problematic. They're just a clear example of what budget cereal is. A highly processed grain product with nutrients engineered back in, built around volume rather than quality. Once you see that clearly, the low price begins to make a lot more sense than the cereal itself. Number 5. Kellogg's Cocoa Pops. Cocoa Pops is perhaps the clearest example in the entire cereal aisle of a product designed primarily to appeal to children. The cartoon monkey, the tagline, the milk that turns brown. These are not incidental design choices. They are deliberate strategies built to create preference and brand loyalty in young consumers before they're old enough to read a label, and they are extraordinarily effective. What the marketing creates is an association with fun, reward, and positive feeling. What the label reveals is worth understanding alongside that. Cocoa Pops contains around 35 grams of sugar per 100 grams, broadly comparable to some chocolate biscuits. A standard serving with milk can account for a significant portion of a child's recommended daily sugar intake before 9 a.m. And because the product is specifically designed to be enjoyable to children, portion control is an additional challenge. The fun of the brown milk is an incentive to pour more. The ingredient list includes rice, sugar, cocoa powder, glucose syrup, salt, cocoa mass, palm oil, barley malt extract, and flavorings. Glucose syrup is a highly processed sweetener that appears alongside sugar, meaning the sweetness in this product comes from at least two distinct processed sweet ingredients simultaneously. And flavorings without specification gives the consumer no way of knowing where exactly the chocolate taste comes from. That vagueness is permitted by law. It doesn't mean the product is hiding something sinister, but it does mean it isn't telling you everything either. The UK has introduced restrictions on advertising unhealthy foods to children, with ongoing debates about how those rules apply to packaging, in-store placement, and digital advertising. The fact that a product with this sugar content is still packaged with cartoon characters and children's branding is a detail worth sitting with, especially when you consider that many parents buying this product believe they're giving their children something that counts as breakfast rather than something closer to a chocolate treat. Number 6. Aldi Harvest Morn Honey Loops. Aldi's Harvest Morn Honey Loops is the budget alternative to branded honey oat ring cereals. It does what all budget alternatives do: delivers something that looks and functions like its pricier counterpart for considerably less. The sugar content sits at around 27 grams per 100 grams. The ingredient list includes oat flour, sugar, honey, wheat flour, modified maize starch, salt, and added vitamins. The word honey features prominently on the front of the pack, but when you read the ingredient list in order of weight, honey appears well below sugar. This is one of the most widespread practices in the cereal industry, using a natural, premium-sounding ingredient prominently in the name while that ingredient is present in smaller quantities than sugar or other sweeteners. Honey sounds wholesome and natural. It conjures bees and meadows. But if it appears after sugar in the ingredient list, the name is doing marketing work rather than nutritional work. The modified maize starch is also worth understanding, a starch treated to alter its texture and stability properties. A processing additive rather than a food ingredient in any traditional sense. The packaging communicates something pleasant and homely. The ingredient list, read carefully, doesn't quite support that impression. Number 7. Morrisons Savers Cornflakes. Morrisons Savers Cornflakes are the absolute bottom of the market, the cheapest version of the most basic cereal in the aisle. And the question that follows isn't how dare they sell it cheaply. The question is, what does cheapest actually mean when it comes to food? The ingredient list is predictably short: milled maize, sugar, salt, added vitamins. The nutrient profile looks acceptable because vitamins have been added to ensure it does. But the story begins long before the box. The grain behind a budget own brand cereal has moved through some of the highest volume, most price-pressured commodity channels in the food industry. Traceability is not a priority. Consistency is, and that's achieved through processing, not through ingredient quality. Any variation that might suggest genuine natural food has been engineered out. The label communicates the absolute minimum. No origin, no sourcing detail, no welfare credentials. Ingredients listed by legal obligation, not by any desire to tell the full story. When a product has nothing worth saying about where it comes from, the label tells you that, even if it doesn't say it out loud. The low price reflects the full system behind it. Once you understand that system, it stops looking like a bargain and starts looking like exactly what it is. Number 8. Nestlé Chocolate Shreddies. Original Shreddies has a certain old-fashioned credibility, the woven wheat shape, the unflashy branding. It sits in the public imagination somewhere between honest cereal and proper breakfast. And that credibility gets extended to chocolate Shreddies, which carries the original's trusted image while delivering a significantly different product. Chocolate Shreddies contains around 29 grams of sugar per 100 grams. The ingredients are whole grain wheat, sugar, cocoa powder, salt, barley malt extract, and added vitamins. Whole grain wheat is first, sugar is second. In a product that carries the visual credibility of the Shreddies brand, built on wholesome, woven whole wheat, sugar, being the second largest component by weight, is surprising when you look closely. The whole grain credential is real, but whole grain is not automatically a guarantee of balance. You can have a product that leads with whole grain and still contain substantial added sugar. The industry has become very skilled at using whole grain as a front-of-pack anchor, while building the rest of the product around ingredients that undermine the healthy impression it creates. The fortification list is long: iron, niacin, zinc, B6, riboflavin, thiamine, folic acid, vitamin D, B12. All added, all required to make the label match the image, the branding projects. Without them, the nutritional story would look quite different. Chocolate Shreddies is perhaps the most interesting example on this list of how brand heritage and whole grain marketing can carry a product that a straightforward sugar and processing analysis would place in a less flattering category. Now let's talk about the cereals that actually earn their place on a breakfast table. 3 stand out consistently in the UK market. Plain porridge oats. Not flavored sachets, not instant packets with added sugar, just plain rolled oats or steel-cut oats from any supermarket. 1 ingredient, no added sugar, no artificial flavoring, no fortification required because nothing was stripped out. That's not a limitation. That's the difference between a food and a product. Weetabix Original deserves credit as one of the better options in the mainstream aisle. 3 ingredients. Whole grain wheat, sugar, salt, and a low sugar content relative to nearly everything around it. It's not exciting. It also has almost nothing to hide. In a market where that's increasingly rare, that counts for something. Brands like Rude Health and Stoats have built ranges around oats and whole grains without unnecessary additives or misleading health claims. They're not available in every budget, but their ingredient lists are a useful benchmark for what transparency actually looks like. What these options share isn't clever marketing. It's simplicity, fewer ingredients, less distance between the front of the box and the back. Here's what this investigation keeps coming back to. The cereal industry is one of the most sophisticated marketing ecosystems in the food world. Words like natural, whole grain, goodness, and balanced have been refined over decades into a language designed to reassure before it informs. The front of the box is a sales tool. The back of the box is the truth. And most people spend far more time reading the front. This isn't about fear. It isn't about never eating cereal again. It's about reading the back of the box as carefully as the front. It's about understanding that fortified vitamins are added back in because processing took them out. It's about asking what whole grain actually means when sugar is listed directly below it. It's about knowing that a cartoon character on a box is not a recommendation from a nutritionist. It's about recognizing that light is a feeling the marketing team wants you to have, not a regulated claim backed by science. Every cereal in this video is legal. Everyone is bought by millions of people across the UK every single week. And everyone carries marketing language that creates an impression worth examining more closely than most people have time for on a Tuesday morning. But you have time now. And the questions are simple ones. What is the first ingredient? What is the second? How many of the nutrients on the label were added rather than natural? What does the serving size on the label actually look like compared to what you pour into your bowl? Nature made the oat with 1 ingredient. Industry turned breakfast into a 40-ingredient engineering project and put a cartoon character on the front to stop you asking why. Stay aware, stay sharp, read the label, and protect your plate.